Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Just some random thoughts about wide receiver evaluation. Because the things I say, and then I'm not sure if I say them in my head or if I've said them recently. And also Terrace Marshall of LSU. Yeah, we talked about him a few times. I was talking about him again, obviously online, and a thought occurred that I thought might be worth a video, so let's do that, I guess. Just something about how I evaluate wide receivers and what we think of Terrace Marshall. Post-draft. Now that he doesn't have first-round draft capital, after I fully expected and was told for sure he would get first-round draft capital. Yeah, so something I don't think always comes off or is perhaps not made as clear as I would like it is I don't evaluate players, really. I look for how well players compare to past players who have scored more points in the NFL for fantasy. Weird loopy logic, but that's what I do. It's actually very direct logic. It's, what has happened before that then connected to the thing that we're searching for. And what that means is sometimes I get into conversations and it clicks for me that, we're talking about different things. You think I'm saying that I think this player is bad at football, because sometimes it's fun to say it that way and it's a lot easier and, again, more direct just to get the point across that way. So I talk about it that way all the time, and I'm not. It's also why I bet on lower floors, or what some people would call players who they think have lower floors quite often, because my main concern is how well their production, or how well what they did in college, and also their physical makeup, I guess, to a certain extent, fits with what has connected to high fantasy points in the past. What's the comparison? And that's not really evaluating how good they are at it. There are some stats that are performance stats I have in the database I like to look at for that kind of edge, like looking at yards per team pass attempt for wide receiver, yards per team attempt for running back, so on and so forth. But ultimately, my models, what I've constructed them to do, and what I mostly am doing when I evaluate wide receiver is how well do they compare. So when I look at someone like Terrace Marshall, he doesn't compare very well. And so we get into this argument of, well, if he had played more, he would have looked like this. And my main point about that is that would have still been below average, but also that's never happened before. This comparison thing that I've got stuck in my head as a central threshold, and I didn't trigger when we were having that conversation constantly over the last 2 months, but it did while we were talking about his draft capital, because now I'm stuck where I kind of like Terrace Marshall. So I looked up DLS rankings, because we don't really have ADP yet, and he's currently wide receiver 5, not wide receiver 3, as he was rumored to be, and that's very early post-draft rankings, consensus rankings, so he might still fall a bit, and that's already pushing him towards the end of the first round. I think if he hits the second round, I like that, because it hasn't happened before, but a lot of smart people have looked at what he's done and think they see it. Most of the people that I trust on the tape, they haven't had glowing reviews, but it's an interesting balance, and in the second round, I get it. If you like Terrace Marshall, I think that's great value. I won't say I got it right if he doesn't hit from the second round, because that feels like a decent bet, frankly. I get it. And it's because, again, of the way I evaluate him. Terrace Marshall does not compare well directly to players that have had a lot of fantasy points in the future. It's not about how good he is or how good he could be or what he necessarily did. It's about what he did, how well what he did compares to past prospects. And it's this weird little side or mini step between the evaluation and the conclusion that I'm making that I don't think everyone realizes that I'm making when they're debating Terrace Marshall with me, because I got stuck in a conversation by some very kind-hearted and well-meaning and kind people said very nice things and were very reasonable, that couldn't understand what I was trying to say. at all, because the sentence was weird because of this like little sidestep I do, which is that I think the fact that Terrace Marshall fell in the draft is kind of an indication of what I was seeing in his numbers. There is greater risk in his profile than, oh, he could be wide receiver 3 because if he's as skilled as these numbers could have been, la la la. They were making a, I think his skill set is this high argument. And I couldn't go with that because his comparison is terrible. And I can't find reason to make those adjustments to then compare him to past prospects. And so I was on a separate branch of the tree. And so when I see him fall into the second round, and the reason given is injury concerns, I'm like, aha, I see more risk in the profile. And the answer back is, you didn't say he would fall for injury concerns. I'm like, no. But I was borrowing. Lots of players miss games or don't play enough in college, quite often because of injuries, but also because of other reasons, not being able to fight their way onto the field, not being able to earn opportunity. And frankly, I don't know what goes into that number. I don't watch the tape. I don't know these players, and I don't, read stories behind the scenes or what's going on, or anything like that. I'm borrowing signal from the commonality of what typically happens. And to me, that relates directly to draft capital. I don't know what goes into evaluating a wide receiver or a running back or a quarterback to draft them. I've never been anywhere close to someone doing that professionally, other than maybe bumping up to one or two on Twitter. That's it. So I use draft capital because it has the highest signal, and I think a lot of that is opportunity, and opportunity is king to get volume, to get success, to get fantasy points. So I think a lot of it is opportunity, but a lot of other stuff goes into draft capital. There's a whole freaking team. There's a scout team and an analytics team and a coaching team, and I assume other elements of the team that work together and spend a hell of a lot of time and money trying to figure out who to draft. I don't know how any of that works, or really what goes into it, let alone what goes into it for every team, or how the actual decision to draft a player is made and how that is different on every team. I just know that the end number, the end result, the draft capital, the draft round, has this much signal. In the same way that players, comparing them directly without per gaming it, especially under a threshold of 8 games played, doesn't compare well to prospects, so it leads to a higher hit rate or a lower miss rate, which is really where I concentrate my efforts. So I'm borrowing signal from a number I don't fully understand, and I'm okay not understanding it. I don't have to, because I don't want to become an amateur online doctor. Oh, well, you see, he missed time for this reason, and you see the way he's limping in this game. That means that's why his numbers. I'm not a doctor. Even if I was, I don't know the patient, don't know the player. I'm not on the team, and maybe some of those are excuses, or I don't want to get into it. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. The end result has this much signal, and it's very consistent, and it leads to a lower miss rate. Same with draft capital. I don't have to pretend I know how to evaluate a wide receiver or whether a wide receiver is a good or a bad pick or not. I just have to take the signal, thank you, and then use it. And I think I'm okay with it. Honestly, I think most people would think that's a worse process, but I'm not trying to do anything but winning fantasy. I'm not trying to pretend to be a scout, an NFL GM, or like I know all about football. No, I enjoy watching it, and I enjoy playing fantasy football, and that's it. So I'm fine just borrowing all the signal I can, and missed games are just missed games to me, and whatever goes into that, it's fine. That's why Jalen Waddle in this draft, who also got first-round capital this year, he's more interesting, because even despite missing games, so he doesn't compare well, some of his role stats, some of the actual stats that compare what he did to other players, like his 3.0 yards per team pass attempt, that was his best year in yards per team pass attempt in a smaller sample that doesn't compare well to past prospects, because he wasn't on the field enough to really show that dominance, perhaps. But the fact he hit that number is like, okay, I see some heights there. Like players that get around 3, that's an overall positive number from any conference. In any year, that's a good best number. Smith never hit that. So yeah, I think it's relevant that if you're at all listening or using my opinions as a soundboard for your own, hopefully, that you should know that's the way I'm doing it. I just compare players to past players based on several things that seem to have signal. I then try to make some sort of evaluation on what I think their talent is compared to each other, but that's ancillary, and I will throw it away pretty quickly. Like, I like that about Jalen Waddle, but I'm not taking it. I'm not betting on it. I will say to someone that's willing to draft him in the first round, I won't tell you not to, because there's interesting marks, and you could listen to people that have access to information that I don't, i.e. those that watch, who have a good understanding or feel like they've developed a good understanding of how to observe small things that don't get recorded and therefore don't end up in stat sheets, that players have in common before they go and dominate in the NFL, or their particular blend of skills and how that might work for the team they were drafted. That's not something I have access to. And so using that stuff to bolster the fact there are some positive numbers, and therefore you want to draft him, he's got first round capital, let's go. I'm like, go with the football gods. I fully support you, and if it doesn't miss, you did not make a bad mistake. Some people like Tony, for similar reasons in this class, who also got good draft capital. I can't even see those positive signs on Tony's profile, but again, other information is available and we should use it. I like to bet on players that compare the most directly with the least amount of adjustment to past prospects, and that's the order I go in, and that's kind of where my ranks come from as well, with a little bit of layering on top with expectation of role and landing spot, and if I think they can dominate in a way that's particularly good for fantasy, and that's where we get to Rashad Bateman, but don't get me started right now. Landing spots, man. So yeah, I don't know. Me to you, whether it's useful or interesting or not, I am not evaluating talent. There's a little bit of that in there, and I like to think I have some kind of inkling, in the same way everyone watches the pros and like, you see what's going on here. This guy's superior to this guy on the tennis court, because I'm watching tennis now for some reason randomly, because he lifts his shoulder high. But I am no way convinced I know what makes talent. I don't think we can define talent. I want that end result, which is mostly points. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm comparing them literally to past players, and then saying I want the ones that compare the best to past players, because hell if I know what I'm doing, but if I'm going to miss, I want to miss on the players that did similar things in college to those that went on to have success. And if you have another route, you have another in, you evaluate the tape, you have a different process, I sure hope you use it, but you should know that's what I do. Yeah, it's just relevant because there are a few different conversations I've gotten in lately. It's like there's a disconnect here. I'm not saying I don't think Terrace Marshall, right? Could be good. I mean, a lot of smart people seem to say he is. I'm saying, but I do know his numbers compare poorly. And that might seem blockheaded or stubborn to you, but okay. I know it feels better than when I didn't do any of that stuff, and all these years of grinding I've had to do to make friends that can actually do a lot of the work I can't, to get to the point where I can actually know who compares well. I feel better about betting on that, and when I miss, at least I understand why. Like, I understand the bet I made a lot better, and I'm enjoying fantasy a lot more. So, blockheaded, I guess, stubborn, sure, but I mean, I'm not going to trust you, man. I'm not going to do it just because I trust you. Sorry. Trust me, he's just good. Okay, yeah, but that seems like more something to do with your pick, not mine. And I don't believe I have super football observation skills, so I just go with that. Yeah. I thought it was interesting that there was really we were arguing across points because they were thinking I was saying, well, this guy clearly doesn't have the talent, and I was saying, no idea. Honestly, no idea. I just know what he used with whatever talent he has that doesn't look like what this guy or this guy or this guy or this guy did. Are we done? Anyway, I thought it was an interesting discussion. I thought it was an interesting point about my process. And again, Terrace Marshall, the further he falls, the more I'll be willing to draft him. I just think there's more risk in that profile based on the fact that he never played. It's like Jalen Waddle. It's like Tony. I'll draft him. no problem. But there's more risk in those profiles from my perspective than I'm comfortable with taking where they're at right now. And as Terrence Marshall falls a little bit, that will balance out. Yeah. Yeah. That's... I don't know if that's good enough to be a YouTube video, but anyway, I made it. So, hey, sub to YouTube. No. I keep thinking if I just say it enough, it'll normalize it for me. And it's not working. It's not working. But yeah, thanks for checking out. If you did, let me know. Let me know. Let me hear it. Let me know what you think about that, or anything else. I'm just lonely. I would just quite like to talk to you in the comment section, to be honest. That's what this whole video is about. Appreciate it. Talk to you again next time. Bye.